everyone, this is Tiffany. Welcome to Campus Teachers Show. My job is to interview teachers around the world and tease out their teaching tactics, education research, or tools they use. Hopefully this show can offer some ideas for you to experiment in your classroom. Today my guest is Nicole Plante. Nicole had been a middle school teacher for almost 8 years, though now she pivoted her career as an amazing designer. Her first stop as a teacher is in New York City Department of Education. She instructed suspending students or at-risk youth from diverse schools and socio-economic backgrounds. The unique experience laid out the foundation for building humanity and resilience in her teachings. After NYC, Nicole moved to Bay Area and taught in Corpus Christi School, which is hugely different from her previous one. It's a Catholic school that nurtures students not only academic but also spiritual growth. Now let's learn from Nicole's experience in Corpus Christi as a homeroom teacher. Nicole, you were an 8th grade homeroom teacher in Corpus Christi Elementary and Middle School. Can you tell us what the responsibility is as a homeroom teacher?
Yeah, girl, it's even different for being an 8th grade homeroom teacher because being the 8th grade homeroom teacher for a Catholic school has even more added responsibilities. I don't think I was paid more. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was not paid more for this. But like 8th grade, you have graduation. So that's huge as a homeroom teacher, where you're coordinating and practicing, gathering either baby pictures or doing their portraits. There's a lot of interruptions to the school day because of things like that. So I'm beginning at the end, but like what we would, let me kind of go a little bit more chronologically. In the beginning of the year, they do a youth day at the Catholic Cathedral in Oakland. Because they're part of the Oakland Diocese. And then we would do high school visits for Catholic high schools in our kind of in our area. And so again, a lot of these are interrupting the school week, the school day. We would also do some fun things like, field trips, but also they did this thing with parents where it's almost like going to the parents' jobs in a way in order for them to appreciate and understand different industries and professions. And so that would happen kind of late in the year, especially when, they're becoming a little, angsty and wanting to graduate already and things like that. We would, as a homeroom, we would coordinate with other grades in order to cross planning for Christmas programs, for gingerbread house making things with first grade. They were also mostly on student council. Then we would have our own class council, which would coordinate our 8th grade dances, which we would have we were trying to do 3 a year, but usually it was like 2 if we could, or maybe 3, because as an 8th grade homeroom teacher, I would help coordinate that and I would have to chaperone that too. So not only am I doing, the usual, let me just say, so my day, Tiffany, would begin, I would get to school at 7 a.m. I would not leave until 6 p.m. And some days when we had programs or a school dance, I would just stay there and then I wouldn't go home until 9:30 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very intense. And it is very rewarding, definitely. But I do think I hit burnout because of that a lot sooner than if it didn't have all the extra responsibilities.
We know that your expertise is in English literature. How did you prepare for the subjects that you are not familiar with?
That's a great question. So for me, why I really like, and you might have heard of this too, Tiffany, but why I like standards, why I like learning objectives, why I like these benchmarks that usually are either part of curriculum planning or tied to performance indicators for grades, things like that. It's because it gives a framework for especially new teachers when they don't know what they're supposed to teach. Well, these are the benchmarks. These are the things that the students need to learn by the end of the year. So, you might have heard of the term backwards planning. That's part of backwards planning is picking out these learning objectives or standards, competencies, and figuring out how am I going to address those things. So that's why, like, and some people like are all about, the standards, or they are for or against Common Core for many other reasons. But to have none, it's very disorienting for a new teacher. For me as being a new teacher, I relied on the Common Core in order to tell me this is what you're supposed to be teaching so that you make sure that the students are where they need to be.
How did you usually structure your course throughout a semester?
I did backwards design with an overarching theme. So it might have been something like, resilience or humanity. And then you would have essential questions about that in order to draw out discussion and bigger understanding. And so what that would do is it would widen the connections. So you may have several texts that you choose in order to address that theme. And then to bring greater connections, it can connect to that theme, and then it can give you a different perspective on it, or it can give you something that reverberates it, makes it stronger. But what I also loved about doing it thematic style was the great opportunity in literature is to really get to those big questions about what it is to be human. How do we treat people? Like, I think that it's very important, especially with, young people, in order to get them thinking of these philosophical kind of questions, because not only is it going to be forming who they are, their personality, but how they treat other people. And I think that even though we put a lot of emphasis on, academic skills or knowledge, that's another part of learning, is how to be a good person, how to be responsible to the earth, things like that, right? And for them to really grapple with it before they're turned out to be, an adult and a voting adult, right? To be a citizen. So I really loved things like that because, especially in my subject matter and also teaching social studies for 8th grade, we could draw connections. And I think that that's what really helps retain information, is you can, make those links and thematic connections.
Can you give us an example of how you use thematic style in your class?
I taught Night by Eli Wiesel. I never know how to pronounce his last name, but it's about the Holocaust, his Holocaust experience, right? And that was part of the theme of humanity. It's a huge kind of topic, but it's also very appropriate to kind of how do we treat people? What's our responsibility? And I think it was that theme, but it could have also been something else. I always change things up a little bit every year, which is good and bad because, it doesn't give me the feedback in order to really hone in on something, and make it amazing quickly, because I have to wait until the next year in order to try it out again. Because I didn't, I only had one class that I was teaching, rather than like a lot of English or literature teachers would teach the same lesson 4 times a day, but to different, classes of students. So now I had the same one.
Yeah.
So it was, I only knew by a different year. So anyway, for something like that, then I would choose like a piece of poetry too that would speak to this view of humanity as well. A nonfiction piece, so a current event article of like, let's look at humanity today. And this could also tie in with something social justice for religion. So like how, what's our duty to other people, especially in other countries or something like that too. And so even within that theme, I could cover, the historical significance and events of the Holocaust, which is social studies, which is history, the narrative style and devices, even using metaphor and symbolism in a nonfiction book by Eli Wiesel. And there was also poetry to it. There's songs I played. So, even touching into music. I would show an interview with Holocaust survivors. So what I'm kind of getting into also was when you're doing this planning, you're also differentiating. You're finding different media in order to teach the same thing in a different way, perhaps. I mean, differentiation is in a lot of different, just like in that, it's a lot of different things for what you're doing. So when I would plan, I would also plan media rich things to kind of like open it up, especially if the students, learn in a better way with videos than they do with lecture versus like, books, right? All these different things in order for them to grapple with the theme.
So far, I heard using media reach and thematic styles in your course. Is there any other teaching methods that you used before that you found really useful in your class, like game-based learning, board games?
One of my favorite things, and I hope it was also a favorite thing of the students, we would do different kind of book reports. It wasn't a written report, it was a project report. And I gave them a matrix, so like a grid of all these different types of hands-on projects that they could do in order to do their book report. Really, like and I can't remember what I called it. I think it was independent reading. Yeah, that's what I called it, independent reading project. And they had to do multiple things for it. And we did it it was going to be every quarter, but we ended up just doing it for the first 3 quarters because by the end of the year, I was overwhelmed and they were overwhelmed. So it was good enough to do it for three out of the 4. But yeah, they would have to present their book to the students. So they would have to do a presentation, and that's engaging also in them being able to summarize, in a succinct way, work on their soft skills for presentation, right? Things like that. But then also the fun thing of that, and I hope again it was fun for them, one of them could be where they could create a board game based off of their book. And other things like, oh my God, there was a photo essay one where one of my students did it with her Barbies, which was hilarious, but like amazing. And there was another, and they could always get me to approve. Like if they had an idea that wasn't listed there, they could just present it to me, like saying, hey, Ms. Plant, this is what I'm thinking of doing, and I can approve it. And most likely I would approve it, because really the end of it was to get them excited about reading, to get them excited about being creative, and to do something a little bit fun at school rather than just like essays and, reports and I don't know, like tests and things like that. So yeah, like there was one kid who read a book on Minecraft and then he wanted to create his own world in Minecraft, and he was totally into Minecraft, right? And
there's a book about Minecraft.
Yeah. And so some parents, I don't know, they were like, oh, Miss Plant, that's yeah, I'm worried that this book's not rigorous enough for my child, and all I like, pretty much my response to them usually was, I'm just trying to get them excited about reading. Like, this is independent. This is them doing it on their own time. Therefore, it needs to be their choice. And yeah, there are times when we need to challenge them. That's a lot of the books and the literature we do in class. Like, I'm forcing them to read, this book about the Holocaust. They might as well lighten it up with some Minecraft, right? But what I really did love, especially from that kid and his parent, his mom came to me and she said, Miss Plant, he loves you because you let him read a book on Minecraft. I'm like, you know what? That's fantastic. Like, I know he'll not like me another year, I'm sure, but like, at least we have a good relationship right now. But yeah, there were a lot of different projects. They could do their own like alternative ending to the book. They could create a children's story based off of it. So it's just kind of like getting it to the essential details. They could do like a diorama thing, right? I changed it up a lot. Like, they couldn't do the same method, like the same project. Because like, they if they're really talented on one thing, they might just do that, and they're not challenging themselves in a different media. I can't remember though. There's so many, and quite honestly, I got the idea from some teacher resources that I found online, and I just added on to it. So that's another thing for resources out there. Like, teachers who pay teachers. I know that that's like big and popular there. There's like the most giving and open community are teachers. They want to help other teachers,
Right.
especially if it's going to be helping students love school or love learning, rather,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. All right. The last question I want to ask is, Nicole, what advice you would give to a person who wants to be a teacher in the US?
Sometimes, depending on your situation, it may be hard to get into teaching because there are actually a lot of tests and certifications and the masters and things like that require money in order to become a teacher with not necessarily much payoff. Or, I would say look into if there are some fellowships, if there are some funding things to make that happen for yourself. If financially it's difficult, because I think that there are a lot of resources out there to help people who want to do something that's in service. And I think that what's really important, I think a lot of people go into teaching thinking kind of like what I did. Well, might as well be a teacher. A lot of people and that's their concept, right? And so I think it's really important in order to do some like student teaching, in order to really understand what is the day-to-day. Is it for you? I think it's very important in order to like apprentice, like figure it out before you go through the whole program and decide that it's not for you. So that's my big advice, is to see if you can volunteer, do student teaching, work underneath another teacher before you even go through all of it, so that you can understand, yes, this is for me, or no, it's not for me.
Sweet. That's a really great and practical advice. Thank you, Nicole.
Oh, thank you so much, Tifa, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. We will put the things mentioned in the interview to the show notes. If you enjoy our show, welcome to share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.